Lost in Sands. Chapter 1. Lost in the Sands. The road stretched out before him, endless and flat, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the vast expanse of tan and gold. Jalal had always liked the quiet of driving, the hum of the engine, the rhythm of the tires against the road. It was meditative, almost hypnotic. But now the silence felt heavier, oppressive even. He reached for the radio, twisting the dial, but all he got was static. He turned it off again. The Nevada desert wasn't supposed to be this quiet. There should have been something. Wind brushing over the sagebrush, the distant cry of a hawk, even the low rumble of another car passing by. But it was just him and the sun, glaring down in a way that made his skin feel tight and his eyes ache behind his sunglasses. Jalal glanced at the dashboard. The needle on the fuel gauge hovered just above empty. He'd meant to stop back in the last town, but it had been one of those blink-and-you-miss-it places, and he hadn't felt like turning around. He'd figured the next gas station wasn't far. It was always not far in America, wasn't it? The land of convenience where you could find a drive-through burger and a cup of coffee in the middle of nowhere. Except, apparently, here. The car sputtered. He felt it first, the way the engine hesitated beneath his feet. Then it coughed and lurched, and the steering wheel jerked in his hands. Jalal's stomach dropped as the car coasted to a stop, the engine giving one last pitiful groan before falling silent. He sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, the stillness settling around him like a shroud. The air inside the car was already thick with heat, the kind that clings to your skin and makes it hard to breathe. He opened the door and stepped out, the ground radiating heat through the soles of his sneakers. The desert stretched out on either side of the road, vast and indifferent. The horizon shimmered, the heat rising in waves that made the world look like it was breathing. Jalal squinted against the sunlight, scanning for any sign of civilization. There was nothing, just sand and scrub and sky. He popped the trunk and rummaged through the clutter. A half-empty water bottle, a granola bar, a flashlight with dying batteries. His phone showed no bars, the screen mocking him with its uselessness. He tried calling anyway, holding it above his head as if a few extra inches might make a difference. It didn't. Shit, he muttered, shoving the phone back into his pocket. He leaned against the car, the metal hot enough to burn through the thin fabric of his shirt, and stared down the road. He could walk. There had to be something up ahead. A gas station, a rest stop, a house, something. He looked back the way he'd come. It was farther than he remembered. The road curved slightly, disappearing into the haze. He could feel the desert watching him, waiting. Jalal wasn't a stranger to solitude. Back home, in Amen, he'd often taken long drives into the hills, where the city's noise gave way to silence and the air smelled of earth and pine. He'd sit on the hood of his car and watch the sun set over the mountains, letting the quiet settle into his bones. But this silence was different. It wasn't peaceful. It was vast and empty, a silence that could swallow you whole. He took a swig from the water bottle, the liquid warm and metallic on his tongue. He capped it tightly, rationing it in his mind. He'd walk a few miles, see if he could find help. If not, he'd come back to the car. The road had to lead somewhere. The first mile was easy enough. The asphalt was cracked and uneven, but it held the heat better than the sand, which shimmered on either side like an ocean of gold. Jalal kept his head down, the sun pressing against his back, and focused on the rhythm of his steps, one foot in front of the other, steady, measured. By the second mile, the heat had seeped into his bones. Sweat dripped down his spine, soaking the collar of his shirt. He stopped to take another sip of water, his throat dry and scratchy. He scanned the horizon again, but it was the same in every direction. Just sand and sky and the faint outline of distant hills. The road seemed to stretch forever, a cruel joke played by the desert. Jalal's legs ached, his feet dragging against the asphalt. He told himself to keep going, just a little farther. There had to be something up ahead. A gas station, a rest stop, a house. Something. But there was nothing. He stopped in the shadow of a lone Joshua tree, its twisted branches reaching for the sky like a skeleton's fingers. The shade was a relief, though it did little to cool the air. Jalal sank to the ground, his back against the rough bark, and closed his eyes. His heart was pounding, his chest tight. He tried to slow his breathing, but every inhale felt like swallowing fire. He thought of his mother, her voice soft and steady, as she told him to always carry extra water. "The desert is beautiful," she'd said once, as they'd stood on the balcony of their apartment, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "But it's not kind." Jalal laughed bitterly, the sound dry and hollow in the stillness. She'd been right, of course. She always was. He could almost hear her voice now, chiding him for not being better prepared, for not stopping for gas when he'd had the chance, for being so damn stubborn. He opened his eyes and looked down at the water bottle in his hand. There was only a quarter left. He took a small sip, just enough to wet his lips, and screwed the cap back on. He couldn't afford to waste it. The sun was lower now, but it was still hot, the kind of heat that clings to your skin long after the sun has set. Jalal pushed himself to his feet, his legs trembling beneath him. He couldn't stay here. He had to keep moving. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the desert had transformed. The golden sands turned to deep shades of purple and blue, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. The air cooled quickly, the heat giving way to a biting chill that made Jalal shiver. He stumbled along the road, his steps uneven, his vision blurring at the edges. The stars began to appear, one by one, sharp and bright against the inky blackness. He'd never seen so many stars before. Back home, the city lights drowned them out, leaving only a handful visible. But here they stretched across the sky like a tapestry, infinite and ancient. Jalal stopped and tilted his head back, the beauty of it momentarily stealing his breath. For a moment he forgot the thirst, the ache in his legs, the gnawing fear in his chest. He felt small beneath the vastness of it all, a single speck in an endless universe. But the moment passed, and the reality of his situation came crashing back. He was alone, miles from anywhere, with no water, no food, no way to call for help. The desert was beautiful, yes, but it was not kind. He sank to the ground, the cold seeping into his skin, and pulled his knees to his chest. The road stretched out before him, disappearing into the darkness. He thought of his mother again, her hands warm against his cheek, her voice a lullaby in the night. He thought of the life he'd left behind, the one he wasn't sure he'd ever see again. And for the first time since the car had broken down, Jalal let himself cry. Chapter 2. The Fight for Survival. The sun was merciless. It didn't just shine. It bore down, pressing into his skin like a punishment. Jalal wiped his brow with the back of his hand, but the sweat kept coming, relentless. His throat felt raw, each swallow scraping like sandpaper. He hadn't had water since the night before. That was one mistake. There were others. He walked because standing still was worse. The ground shimmered in the heat, playing tricks on his eyes. The horizon stretched out forever, a cruel joke of distance and emptiness. His shoes kicked up pale dust with each step, coating his legs in a fine, gritty film. He could feel the grains sticking to the sweat on his calves. It itched, but he didn't stop to scratch. There was no time for that. The backpack hung heavy on his shoulders. It wasn't packed for survival, just the remnants of a weekend trip gone wrong. A few granola bars, a dead phone, a map that didn't show him where he was now. He'd found a flashlight in the glove compartment and shoved it in there too, though it felt absurd. What good was a flashlight in a desert that seemed endless and unforgiving? He cursed himself for not filling the gas tank, for ignoring the warning light, for thinking he could cut through this stretch of nowhere and save time. Time. What did that even mean now? The desert didn't care about minutes or hours. It stretched on like a place where time had stopped altogether. Jalal scanned the horizon again. Nothing. Just the same pale sand, the occasional scraggly brush, and rocks baked to a dull red. He thought of water, cool, clear, pouring over his tongue and down his throat. It was a cruel thought, but he couldn't stop it. His body wanted what it couldn't have. The heat pressed harder. His thoughts grew sluggish, like trying to run in a dream. He stumbled over a rock hidden in the sand and went down hard, his knees scraping against the rough ground. He hissed through his teeth and sat there for a moment, staring at his hands. They were trembling. Get up. Keep moving. He pushed himself to his feet, wincing at the sting in his knees. The scrape wasn't bad, just angry red lines. But it felt like a personal insult. The desert didn't need to do much to hurt him. It just had to exist. By midday, the granola bars were gone. He rationed them out, breaking pieces off instead of eating them whole. It didn't matter. The dryness in his mouth was worse after eating, the crumbs sticking to the roof of his mouth like ash. He found a patch of shade under a crooked rock formation. It wasn't much, but it was enough to sit for a moment without the sun clawing at him. The air was still, heavy. He closed his eyes just for a moment, and then the memories came. Her face, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the way her hands moved when she talked, expressive, always emphasizing her words. He could hear her voice, soft but certain. He could see the way she'd looked at him that last time before she walked away. What do you want, Jalal? What do you even want? He hadn't had an answer then. He didn't have one now. The desert didn't care about his regrets. It didn't care about anything. He opened his eyes and stood, his muscles aching, his head pounding. The shade had helped, but it hadn't fixed anything. He was still here, still stranded, still fighting. The scavenging began out of desperation. Jalal knew he wouldn't find much, but he couldn't just keep walking without looking. He searched the ground as he moved, hoping for something, anything, that might help. A discard